June 27, 1976, Tel Aviv, Israel. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin sits in his office, staring at a photograph. It's not a photo of the hostages in Entebbe. It's a photo of the man who put them there. A grainy surveillance image taken years ago in Beirut. The face is slightly blurred, but the eyes are clear, cold, calculating. His name is Wadie Haddad, and 3 days ago, he orchestrated the hijacking of Air France Flight 139. 248 passengers and crew, now prisoners in Uganda. The hijackers are demanding the release of 53 terrorists from Israeli prisons. Rabin knows that even if Israel negotiates, even if they rescue the hostages, Hadad will do this again and again. The intelligence file on Rabin's desk is thick. Hadad isn't just a terrorist. He's a doctor, trained as a pediatrician at the American University of Beirut, who chose to use his medical knowledge to plan massacres instead of saving lives. He co-founded the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine in 1967, but by 1976, even they couldn't control him. He was expelled from his own organization for being too radical. His plan to shoot down passenger planes over the Atlantic Ocean with shoulder-fired missiles was too much even for George Habash, the PFLP's founder. So Hadad went independent. He took his network, his weapons, his contacts in the KGB, and became a freelance architect of terror. Entebbe was just his latest masterpiece. Rabin picks up the phone. The call goes to Mossad headquarters. 3 words: find a way. On July 4th, Israeli commandos storm the terminal at Entebbe. The rescue is a stunning success, but 3 hostages die in the crossfire, and the unit commander, Yonatan Netanyahu, is killed by a Ugandan sniper. When the planes land back in Israel, the nation erupts in celebration. But inside Mossad headquarters, there's no celebration. There's only one burning question. How do we make sure Wadie Haddad never does this again? The problem is that Hadad is untouchable. He lives deep in Beirut, surrounded by armed guards 24 hours a day. His wife and children rarely leave his side. He changes apartments every few weeks and moves through the city in armored vehicles. The Mossad has already tried to kill him. Twice. Both times, he survived by sheer luck. Conventional assassination won't work. So Israeli intelligence makes a radical decision. If they can't kill him with bullets or bombs, they'll kill him with something he'll never suspect. His toothpaste. But to understand how he became this untouchable architect of terror, we have to go back to where his story began. Wadie Haddad was born in 1927 in Safed, a small town in what was then British Mandate Palestine. His family was Christian, middle class, educated. As a boy, he dreamed of becoming a doctor, not a revolutionary. He studied medicine at the American University of Beirut, specializing in pediatrics. For a brief time, he actually practiced medicine, treating sick children in refugee camps. But after the 1948 war and the creation of Israel, something in Hadad changed. He joined the Arab nationalist movement, then helped George Habash found the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine in 1967. Unlike other Palestinian groups that focused on guerrilla warfare in the occupied territories, Hadad believed in spectacular international operations, hijackings, bombings, assassinations. He wanted the world to pay attention, and he knew that blood drew cameras. In 1968, Hadad masterminded the hijacking of El Al Flight 426 from Rome to Tel Aviv, the first hijacking of an Israeli passenger plane. In 1970, he orchestrated the simultaneous hijacking of 4 commercial airliners, which were flown to Jordan and blown up on the tarmac in front of international media. The operation became known as Dawson's Field. and it almost triggered a civil war in Jordan. But Haddad's most brutal operation came on May 30th, 1972, at Lydda Airport in Israel. He recruited 3 members of the Japanese Red Army, gave them Czech VZ-58 assault rifles hidden in violin cases, and sent them into the arrivals terminal. They opened fire on a crowd of Puerto Rican Christian pilgrims. 26 people were killed. 78 were wounded. Hadad had planned every detail, down to the timing of the flights to ensure maximum casualties. Israeli intelligence knew Hadad was connected to the Munich Olympics massacre later that year, where 11 Israeli athletes were murdered. His network provided weapons, safe houses, and logistical support to Black September, the group that carried out the attack. By 1976, when Hadad planned the Entebbe hijacking, his body count was in the hundreds. But Haddad's radicalism eventually became a problem even for his own organization. In 1975, he proposed a plan to shoot down passenger jets over the Atlantic Ocean using shoulder-fired missiles. The idea was to target planes flying from New York to Europe, killing hundreds of civilians in a single coordinated attack. George Habash, the PFLP leader, refused. He saw it as mass murder with no political justification. Hadad was expelled from the organization he had helped build. Undeterred, Hadad went independent. He kept his operational network, his weapons suppliers, and his KGB contacts. He also started working as a freelance assassin for Soviet intelligence, eliminating Jewish immigrants and other targets the Kremlin wanted dead. According to Israeli sources, Hadad personally killed at least 3 Soviet defectors in Europe between 1975 and 1977, using methods taught to him by a KGB officer known only as Viktor. By 1976, Israel had decided that Hadad needed to be eliminated. The problem was that he had survived everything they'd thrown at him. On February 18, 1977, Mossad operatives planted a bomb in his apartment building in Beirut. Hadad left to buy groceries 60 seconds before the explosion. His neighbor, a school teacher, died instead. On June 14, 1977, Israeli snipers fired an RPG through his bedroom window at 3 in the morning. That night, Hadad happened to be sleeping in his son's room because the boy had a fever. The rocket tore through an empty bed. Hadad was either incredibly lucky or incredibly careful. Probably both. Conventional methods weren't going to work. Israel needed a different approach. In late 1977, a team of Israeli scientists at a classified laboratory in central Israel received an unusual assignment. They were told to develop a poison that could kill a specific target over a period of months, mimicking the symptoms of a natural disease so perfectly that even experienced doctors would be fooled. The challenge was extraordinary. Most poisons work quickly, leaving obvious traces in the body. Toxicology tests can detect arsenic, cyanide, ricin, and dozens of other common toxins. The scientists needed something that would break down inside the body, leaving no chemical signature by the time the target died. It also had to cause symptoms that matched a known disease, cancer, or organ failure, so that doctors wouldn't suspect foul play. After months of research, the team developed a compound, the exact chemical composition of which remains classified to this day, that attacked the body's internal organs slowly and systematically. The poison caused weight loss, hair loss, internal bleeding, and eventually total organ failure. To any doctor examining the patient, it would look like advanced cancer, possibly leukemia or stomach cancer. But there would be no tumors, no abnormal cells, nothing that definitively proved cancer. Just a body slowly shutting down for no apparent reason. The next question was delivery. How do you get a slow-acting poison into a target who is surrounded by bodyguards, never eats in restaurants, and has his food prepared by trusted family members? The answer came from Hadad's own medical records, which Mossad had obtained through a source inside a Beirut hospital. Hadad suffered from chronic gum disease and brushed his teeth 4 times a day, often using a specific brand of toothpaste. Toothpaste was perfect. The damaged gum tissue in Hadad's mouth would absorb the poison directly into his bloodstream every time he brushed. Over weeks and months, the toxin would accumulate in his liver, kidneys, and bone marrow, slowly destroying them from the inside. And because the poison was hidden in something Hadad used multiple times every day, the exposure would be constant and controlled. Israeli chemists created a modified toothpaste tube that looked identical to the brand Hadad used. Same packaging, same label, same minty smell. Inside, the paste was laced with microscopic amounts of the poison, carefully measured so that each brushing delivered a precise dose. The team tested the modified toothpaste extensively on lab animals, fine-tuning the dosage to ensure a slow, progressive deterioration that would take approximately 6 months to kill. But creating the weapon was only half the problem. The other half was getting it into Hadad's bathroom. That required human intelligence, an agent close enough to Hadad to access his home and make the switch without arousing suspicion. That agent already existed. Mossad had been cultivating this asset for years, waiting for the right moment to activate them. The agent's code name was Sadness. To this day, the true identity of Sadness remains one of Mossad's most closely guarded secrets. What is known is that Sadness was one of 3 people: Hadad's driver, a new bodyguard who had joined his security detail in 1977, or one of the Lebanese nurses who worked in his household. Each had access to his home. Each had the opportunity to make the switch. Israeli intelligence officers delivered the poison toothpaste tube to Sadness in the summer of 1977. The instructions were simple. Wait for the right moment. Replace Hadad's toothpaste with the modified tube and dispose of the original. There would be no second chance. If Hadad noticed anything unusual, if the packaging didn't match perfectly, if the taste was slightly different, the entire operation would fail. Sadness waited, watched. And in early September 1977, the opportunity came. Hadad's wife, Samira, had left the house for 2 days to visit her family. For the first time in months, Hadad was alone. Sadness entered his bathroom and made the switch. Hadad never noticed. September 1977. Beirut. Wadie Haddad brushed his teeth that morning like he always did. 4 times a day, every day, because his gums bled easily, and his dentist had warned him about infection. The toothpaste tasted normal, minty, familiar. He didn't notice anything different. By early October, Hadad started losing weight. Not dramatically at first, just a few kilograms. He assumed it was stress. He was planning several operations simultaneously, coordinating with contacts in Syria, Libya, and East Germany. His appetite decreased. Food didn't taste right anymore. He blamed the Lebanese summer heat, even though it was already autumn. In November, his wife noticed something strange. His hair was falling out. Not in clumps, but steadily, thinning week by week. Hadad went to a doctor in Beirut who ran blood tests. Everything came back normal. The doctor suggested it might be alopecia, an autoimmune condition. Hadad accepted the diagnosis and continued his work. By December, the weight loss had become severe. He'd dropped nearly 15 kilograms in 3 months. His clothes hung loose on his frame. Colleagues who saw him were shocked by his appearance. Hadad visited another doctor, then another. They ran more tests, checked for thyroid problems, diabetes, parasites. Nothing explained the symptoms. In January 1978, the internal bleeding started. Hadad began coughing up blood. His gums, already weak, bled constantly. He developed nosebleeds that wouldn't stop. This was no longer something he could ignore. Friends in the Palestinian movement arranged for him to see specialists in Damascus, then in East Berlin, where East German intelligence, the Stasi, had access to the best doctors in the communist world. The Stasi took Hadad's case seriously. He was a valuable asset, someone the Soviets wanted alive. They admitted him to Charité Hospital in East Berlin, one of the most advanced medical facilities in Eastern Europe. A team of doctors, including oncologists and hematologists, ran every test available. They scanned his organs, biopsied his bone marrow, analyzed his blood for cancer markers. The results were baffling. No tumors, no abnormal cell growth, no signs of leukemia or lymphoma. But his organs were failing. His liver enzymes were elevated. His kidneys were barely functioning. His bone marrow wasn't producing enough red blood cells. The doctors couldn't explain it. Markus Wolf, the head of East German intelligence, suspected poison. He'd seen cases like this before, KGB assassinations using slow-acting toxins. He ordered toxicology tests for 47 different known poisons: arsenic, thallium, ricin, polonium, organophosphates, heavy metals. Every test came back negative. Whatever was killing Hadad, it wasn't in any database. Meanwhile, in Beirut, Hadad's wife Samira had come to her own conclusion. She was convinced her husband was having an affair and had contracted a sexually transmitted disease that he was hiding from her. The weight loss, the fatigue, the bleeding, it all fit. In early February 1978, she confronted him, accused him of infidelity, and left him for 2 months, taking their children to her parents' house in Damascus. This gave Mossad an unexpected window. With Samira gone, Sadness was able to check Hadad's apartment one more time. The poisoned toothpaste tube was almost empty. Hadad had been using it every day for nearly 6 months. By late February, Hadad could barely stand. The bleeding had become constant. The doctors in East Berlin knew he was dying, but they still couldn't identify the cause. On March 10, 1978, his kidneys failed completely. On March 25th, his liver began to shut down. On March 28th, at 11:47 p.m., his heart stopped. Doctors pronounced Wadie Haddad dead at the age of 49. The official cause of death? Cancer. But the medical reports noted an unusual detail. Despite the diagnosis, no tumors were ever found. The moment Hadad died, the Stasi began an investigation. They knew something was wrong. Patients don't die of cancer without having cancer. The autopsy revealed massive organ failure, but no malignancies, no infections, no clear medical cause. Markus Wolf was certain Hadad had been poisoned, but he had no proof. The Stasi conducted a thorough investigation. They interrogated everyone who had access to Hadad in his final months. They analyzed everything he had eaten or drunk. They tested his clothing, his bed sheets, his personal belongings. They even examined the apartment in Beirut where he had lived before coming to East Berlin. Nothing. The poison, if it existed, had vanished. Israeli scientists had designed the toxin to break down completely in the human body. By the time Hadad died, there were no traces left in his tissues or organs. The compound had metabolized into harmless byproducts that were indistinguishable from normal cellular waste. Even if the Stasi had known exactly what to look for, they wouldn't have found it. Soviet intelligence issued a statement saying Hadad had died of natural causes, specifically cancer. The Palestinian movement accepted this explanation publicly, but privately, many suspected assassination. George Habash, Hadad's former comrade in the PFLP, gave a eulogy praising him as a martyr who had given his life to the resistance. There was no mention of cancer or illness. The subtext was clear. We know he was murdered, but we can't prove it. In Israel, Mossad said nothing. Prime Minister Menachem Begin, who had taken office in 1977, was briefed on the operation but made no public comment. Israeli newspapers didn't report Haddad's death. The operation remained completely secret. But inside Mossad, the assassination was considered a landmark success. They had eliminated one of Israel's most dangerous enemies without firing a shot, without risking a single operative, and without any way for the enemy to prove it was murder. The method was so clean, so untraceable, that it could potentially be used again. Except it couldn't. The operation had worked because of a unique combination of factors: a target with a specific medical condition, chronic gum disease that required constant brushing, an agent, Sadness, who had intimate access to his home, and months of time to let the poison work. Those conditions would be nearly impossible to replicate. The Toothpaste assassination remained a one-time operation, a singular achievement in the history of espionage. As for Agent Sadness, what happened to them remains a mystery. Some reports suggest Sadness left Lebanon shortly after Haddad's death and was resettled in Israel under a new identity. Other accounts claim Sadness continued operating in Beirut for several more years, providing intelligence on other Palestinian groups. One rumor, never confirmed, suggests that Sadness was eventually discovered and executed by Palestinian intelligence in the early 1980s. The truth may never be known. What is known is that Haddad's death had immediate strategic consequences. At the time of his death, he was planning at least 3 major operations: the hijacking of an Israeli cruise ship in the Mediterranean, a wave of bus bombings in Tel Aviv, and the kidnapping of a U.S. ambassador in Europe. All 3 operations were cancelled after Hadad died. His network, which relied heavily on his personal relationships with weapons suppliers and intelligence services, fractured without his leadership. Some operatives joined other groups. Others simply disappeared. The truth about Haddad's assassination didn't emerge until 1992, 14 years after his death. When the Berlin Wall fell and Germany reunified, the Stasi archives were opened to researchers. Among the thousands of classified files was the complete medical record of Wadie Haddad, including the autopsy report and the inconclusive toxicology tests. Journalists began asking questions. Former intelligence officers, now retired, started giving interviews. Slowly, the pieces came together. In 2006, a former Mossad officer, speaking anonymously, confirmed what many had suspected. Israel had assassinated Wadie Haddad using a poisoned toothpaste tube. The officer wouldn't reveal technical details or identify Agent Sadness, but the basic outline of the operation became public knowledge. Wadie Haddad's assassination set a precedent that Israeli intelligence would follow for decades. The operation proved that patience, scientific expertise, and deep human intelligence could achieve what bullets and bombs could not. It demonstrated that Mossad could reach targets anywhere, even deep inside enemy territory, without leaving evidence. The method also raised ethical questions that persist today. Hadad was never charged with a crime, never faced trial, never had the opportunity to defend himself. Israel decided he was too dangerous to live and killed him using a weapon he couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't escape. The operation was extrajudicial execution disguised as natural death. But for Israeli planners, the moral calculation was straightforward. Hadad had orchestrated attacks that killed hundreds of civilians. He was planning more. Stopping him saved lives. The method, unconventional as it was, avoided the collateral damage that would have come from a bombing or a commando raid in Beirut. 46 years later, the poison toothpaste remains one of Mossad's most legendary operations, Not because of the technology, but because of the patience. 6 months from the first brush to the last breath. The longest, slowest assassination in modern intelligence history.